Well, since our current leaders in Washington and the ones that I think are coming in on both parties can't seem to get us out of our present mess, and you'd think that they'd have a roadmap since they're the one who drove us there, and you don't believe me, look at last night's debate. Maybe it's time to look for answers from the past. What would Ronald Reagan do? Former speechwriter Peggy Noonan will be here to tell us what she thinks about the sorry state of politics a little later on in the program. But first, you're probably familiar with the 5 stages of grief. There's denial, then there's anger, then there's bargaining, depression, and acceptance. There was a great column this morning in the Wall Street Journal that applies those same stages to the grief surrounding our financial crisis. With here on more of this is Mark Gongloff. He's the guy who wrote the article. He's a reporter and columnist for the Wall Street Journal. Mark, fantastic article. Explain it.
Thanks, Glenn. We've been through at least 3 of the stages of grief so far in this crisis. Back in June, we were still stuck in the 3rd stage, the bargaining phase, where people just sort of thought that if only the government would do something about this, everything would be fine. And we went through the government doing quite a lot of extraordinary things about this, slashing interest rates, bailing out Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, and any number of other banks, and then most recently, $700 billion bailout package. And every time, it didn't fix what was going on. And so we seemed finally to be beyond the bargaining phase, more into the...
But wait, hang on just a second. Are we really? Because, look at what they did last night. They cut the world's interest rates for the first time globally. They're right. Just on to bigger bargaining chip. Here, take the Constitution, take our sovereignty. Here, try this. It's amazing.
And get ready for more. There's going to be more. There will be more rate cuts. I think they will probably end up injecting capital directly into the banking system. But the bargaining is going on within the psyche of the market at this point. And I think at this point, as you saw, stocks fell today, actually, despite a global coordinated rate cut, which I don't know when the last time we ever had anything like that. Despite that, and despite the Fed saying we're basically going to lend money to corporations to finance their day-to-day operations, despite those extraordinary measures, the market was down for a while today. It's up now, which you would sort of expect after being down 13% in 5 days.
It would have been at 400. I saw it today. It would be like down 250 points, then up 123, and then down 414. It was amazing to watch.
It's incredible volatility. There's a volatility measure that is kept track of in Chicago that is at all-time record levels, and that's just because people don't know what to expect next, and they don't believe anymore that the government interventions are going to fix that. And that's why I think we've moved, at least in the psyche of investors, beyond the bargaining phase into, I hate to use this term because it's a loaded term, but it's the depression phase. And I don't mean that in terms of a breadline depression, but just sort of, gosh, what are we going to do now?
Getting your hands around the reality of loss.
Exactly. Right. Where's the bottom for all this? And people are still trying to find the bottom. We could be. I think we're closer to the bottom now than we have been at this point.
I remember when I was optimistic too. Here's my question, because the last phase is acceptance.
Right.
And I don't think people are really looking, because everything moved so rapidly. Everything is, and it's only going to happen faster and faster. Right. They don't really see what we've lost and what we've done. So it's only until everything stops that we're like, okay, what do we have left here? After the ride stops, you realize, I vomited on my wife. You know what I mean?
Exactly. I think there's going to be an embarrassing sort of morning after feeling we're going to get 3, maybe 6 months down the road, where we say we really banned short selling. We really intervened in markets the way we did. We really took on so much obligations, and I think we're really going to have to take a hard look at what we've done. I think some of this is going to be irreversible. The pendulum always swings. Usually swings too far in one direction and then too far back in the other, and some of this government intervention is going to be with us for a while, and what policymakers are going to have to do in the clear light of day is figure out, okay, how do we dial some of this back?
But they're not going to. They're not going to. They started this framework in the 1930s, and they said that they would dial it back, and Washington never gives power back.
They did give some back during the Reagan years. In the past 20 years, they gave some of it back, right? And now it's
right.
And they've given a little bit of it back.
So let me ask you this, and this is what I said. There was a time. It was maybe 2003, and I was releasing a book, and they had a big flag, American flag on the front, and I said, no flags. No flags on the book. I'm a conservative. I don't want any flags, because the way the flag was being used, it's going to become just grotesque after a while, because it was overused. And I said at the time, the pendulum is swinging too far hard the other direction. It's going to swing back just as far, and this is in capitalism, in society, and everything else. It's going to swing back. The secret is to be careful on how far those swings go, because at some point with a big national tragedy, a big depression, another terrorist strike, whatever it is, security risk, the wrong people in power will grab that pendulum, and then it's stuck there whichever way. Does that frighten you at all, that you add on another piece of, you add a 9/11 on top of this, we fundamentally change as America?
That is certainly a terrifying prospect. What's going on right now is potentially terrifying as well, and policymakers and economists and investment banks are trying to get their hands on it. The house is sort of on fire right now. The economic house is sort of on fire, and they're trying to put it out. And we are at risk of a fairly significant economic downturn. We're already going to experience one anyway.
Right.
But people do, I agree, have to keep their heads about this and figure out what's going to be.
Mark, again, a tremendous article. Thank you very much. In America, this is why character does matter. This is why you have to believe your leaders on both sides. Coming up, did you see anybody?